Today we're going to talk about how to grow a business. This video is for actual business owners out there that have made an effort but are looking for something new or looking for a plan to help them develop a strategy as to how to grow their business. I'm no internet guru. This isn't going to be about the latest growth hack or how to use ChatGPT and which ChatGPT tool to use. None of that. This is based off the experience that I have in growing businesses. This is going to really be a decision-making process or framework to help you get started. Let's dig in.
Though I have almost 20 years of experience in private equity and mergers and acquisitions, I am no expert on the various strategies within the game of football. Regardless, I know that running the ball is not a strategy. If your team has a great running back or offensive line, of course running the ball should be an integral part of your game plan, but it still isn't a strategy. Instead, I would simply call it an activity. But what's the difference?
The difference between activities and strategies are that strategies are made up of activities. So for example, a certain strategy is going to be made up of different activities. But just because you're performing certain activities, that does not mean that it's an actual strategy.
Throughout the course of my career, I have encountered numerous business owners that think some of the activities they are performing are a strategy, particularly when it comes to sales and marketing. For example, when asked about a company's sales and marketing strategy, the owner might indicate that one of the members of their team is their primary point of contact with the customer, and he or she will ask the customer what jobs they have or if there is anything else their company can be doing for them. That's actually a great thing to do, but it doesn't represent a strategy. I hate to disappoint, but this isn't rocket science. If you are watching or listening to this, then with enough time or motivation, you could probably come up with most of this on your own. Regardless, not everyone has the time nor the inclination, and I do have experience of talking to more business owners than the average Joe. Throughout the sections that follow, I will be discussing how these principles apply to some of our portfolio companies, namely Southwest Steel, QPD, and Dark Casting, as well as the mothership, 4 Pillars. Before we dive in though, I will warn you that all of these strategies will take much longer to execute than you expect. Some of the growth initiatives have taken as long as 2 years before bearing any fruit. There wasn't always a significant cash burn during this period, just delays and bureaucracy most often. Additionally, I think it would be useful to watch or listen to this episode in conjunction with the episode on strategic planning. The two topics go hand in hand.
One of the 4 pillars of our names is challenge the status quo, which in my mind can be equated to growth. Growth is challenging. It does not come without risk, but to the most boring guy in private equity, growing a business is what is extremely exciting and fun for me, to be honest with you. Stay tuned as we dive into how we have actually used these methods to grow our portfolio companies. Whenever I am in the early stages of trying to solve a problem, I use a framework that's called MECE. M-E-C-E. That stands for mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive. It's a framework that was popularized by the international consulting firm McKinsey & Company, and it is one that I use almost daily, if not weekly.
For example, let's say we are trying to figure out what to eat for dinner. The first step might be eat or don't eat. Those two options comprise all possible options and cannot both occur, thus being mutually exclusive. The don't eat branch ends there. On the eat branch, the next step might be formed as prepare the food myself or have someone else prepare my food. Perhaps your 2 favorite types of food are Italian and Mexican. If so, the next step might be Italian, Mexican, or all other types of food. There is a broad catch-all in this case, but that is fine. This process would continue until all possible options have been identified. I won't do that, but hopefully the process is now understood. I chose this example because even though Italian food and Mexican food are 2 distinct options, you actually could have both. So in the truest sense, they really aren't mutually exclusive. Similar story for growth options. I will talk about growth options as being via organic means or via M&A. Those are certainly distinct, but they could be pursued simultaneously. For the avoidance of doubt, Investopedia defines organic growth as the growth of a business through internal processes, relying on its own resources. Growth via M&A would be the acquisition of a business that is complementary to your own. Of course, you can acquire any business you want, but a future buyer will not consider it to be one enterprise if the businesses aren't complementary in some form or fashion. Organic growth. Within the category of organic growth, there are different approaches that can be used. First, inbound versus outbound. Inbound refers to activities activities designed to stimulate interest in your business through advertising and/or marketing, the result of which is a prospect proactively contacting your company. Inbound perhaps is most associated with software and tech companies, but really any company can use this method. In some technical industries, you will often hear the terms white paper or thought leader. If you hear either of those terms, there's a better than even chance that that indicates a company is using an inbound strategy, though perhaps not exclusively. Another way to think of inbound is brand building. Outbound is what many would consider traditional sales. This is where your company initiates contact with prospects. This might entail old school methods like cold calling.
Okay, great. Well, reason for the call today, John, is something just came across my desk, John. It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. If you have 60 seconds, I'd like to share the idea with you. You got a minute?
Or more technologically advanced methods like automated email marketing campaigns. The primary distinction is the flow of contact from the customer, whether it is initiated by the prospect or the company. In this day and age, it is possible to outsource almost anything, and that applies here as well. Deciding who will perform this function will be a part of the overall strategy. Another major part of the strategy is what types of products or services will drive the growth. Here is where my technical jargon might overwhelm you, but I like to break it down as more of the same or new.
I will be sure to list these complex definitions in the show notes.
All joking aside, these concepts should be fairly self-explanatory. They would involve increasing the capacity of your existing capabilities or adding new capabilities. This doesn't just apply to manufacturing firms. If yours is a service firm, such as landscaping, it might entail adding additional staff and equipment in order to be able to mow more lawns, or adding different types of staff or equipment in order to complete different types of landscaping work, such as tree trimming. Another path for organic growth, though, is operational improvements. If your lead tech, for example, spends 50% of her billable hours on admin work, then hiring an admin would result in increased capacity.
Process improvement is a big topic, and we're actually going to do a video on that at some point. However, in the interim, if you're excited or just want to learn more about process improvement, check out this guide called Learning to See by Mike Rother and John Shook. It's available on this obscure book selling website I use sometime called Amazon, like the rainforest.com, C-O-M. Check it out.
If the more of the same category doesn't appeal to you, then there's always the option to offer new products or services. Though this doesn't apply to every business, we have found the most success in offering a more complete product or service to our customers. In other words, we have tried to expand the capabilities of our company such that it allowed our customer and ourselves to reduce the reliance on other vendors. From a macro perspective, look at cable and telephone companies. Once the technology existed to only need one line coming into the house, it was a natural evolution for one company to offer phone, television, and internet services. Finally, for location-based businesses, another option would be to add a location in a new geography. The landscaping example applies here. Now that we have laid out some of the various choices, it's time to consider what type of customers we will try to get more money from and what they will be spending it on.
Now, it doesn't always work like this, but here are 6 options. 1, increase prices. 2, increase line items. 3, increase quantities. 4, new products. Now, the first 2 are only relevant to existing customers. However, these 2 are relevant to new and existing customers. For the sake of clarity, I'll just rewrite these 2 below again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Get your customers to pay a higher price for the same goods and services. Raising prices is an easy concept to understand, but it takes a lot of work. If you ask someone in sales if prices can be raised, you will get a firm no. But it is rarely a black and white world. Of course, this needs to be done with finesse, but our experience has been that raising prices should be a part of the ongoing strategy to grow revenue. Get your existing customers to buy more of what they currently buy. Though this isn't always applicable, in some situations, your customer might be buying the same product or service from multiple vendors. It isn't uncommon for larger companies to buy the same part from multiple firms in order to create redundancy within their supply chain. However, there's the potential to take a larger piece of that pie. It probably won't be as straightforward as simply asking, but it also won't be overly challenging or complex. That's not to say it will be successful, but it is worth the effort to try. use. Get your existing customers to buy products, services you already offer, but that they don't buy. In some situations, your existing customers might have needs that your current portfolio of products and services could fulfill, but they are using another firm, or perhaps the need is going unfilled. Essentially, you are just trying to get your customer to do more business with you, though perhaps at the expense of your competition. Get your existing customers to buy products or services that you don't currently offer but plan to. Accomplishing this could come in the form of offering an entirely new product or service, or simply enhancing one or more aspects of your current product or service offering. We have the most experience implementing this within the manufacturing space by offering secondary operations to certain products. This might entail a special coating, finish, or machining operation. A great example is within the pool building industry, actually. It is fairly common for pool builders to end the customer relationship once the pool is installed. However, the customer relationship is already in place. It would be relatively easy for the builder to offer pool maintenance services as well. If they were to do so, perhaps the greatest benefit is that this new revenue stream would be recurring in nature as opposed to project-based. Get new customers to buy products or services that you currently offer. Landing new customers is easier said than done, but typically this will be at least part of the strategy. Get new customers to buy products or services that you don't currently offer but plan to. If landing a new customer is hard, then landing a new customer for a new product or service surely must be more difficult. My assessment would be that it usually is, though perhaps not always. Figuring a plan as to how to do this is too complex to be handled here, but stay tuned for a future episode on this topic. Case study. Southwest Steel Fabrication. Southwest Steel is a fabricator of structural and miscellaneous steel. Our capabilities are very broad, though perhaps not completely exhaustive. The company has more certifications than most fabricators, but is unable to fabricate large steel girders for bridges, as an example. Most of our work is secured through a bidding process. Sometimes it is a hard bid process, where the lowest bid wins, but not always.
In order to grow, we analyzed these 6 options to see what we would think would make the most sense for us. First, increase prices. That seemed to be an option for the government jobs, but not so much the hard bid. Certainly something we wanted to explore to see where we could take price increases, but this did not feel like it was going to be a dominant part of the strategy. Increase line items. So this would mean our existing customers buying products that we already make, but are not purchasing at present. This one really didn't feel like a major growth driver because we were providing everything that a customer wanted for a given project. So it just didn't feel like this was going to be a meaningful impact to being able to grow revenues. Similar story with increasing quantities to existing customers. Again, if we had a relationship with a customer, we bid every project that we could for them. So increasing the quantities didn't feel like it could be a major growth category for us. New products. Now, with new products, a big part of this would be very complicated, very large steel girders for bridges, for example. This was a capability that we weren't really sure we wanted to go after. Our new customers certainly would have entertained bids from us, but it was a challenge that we weren't sure we wanted to undertake. Number 5, increase quantities to new customers. Well, here was an interesting opportunity. We already had the capabilities to provide structural steel to commercial buildings, offices, schools, etc. However, we didn't have the capacity in order to produce those at the quantities that our customers or potential customers would need. It seemed very interesting, so we earmarked this one for further exploration. Finally, new products to new customers. This was similar to new products to existing customers. Largely, it would probably have been things like the steel girders. So wasn't a key area that we wanted to focus on. After looking at all those, we finally settled in on increasing the quantities of existing products to new customers. Now, the plan was just going to be how we were actually going to make that a reality. Similar to what we did at Southwest Steel, evaluate these 6 options to see which seems to hold the most promise in terms of growth for your business.
After asking ourselves these questions and evaluating the answers in whole, we decided we wanted to pursue new customers utilizing our current product and capability set. In order to make this happen, we bought automated equipment to increase capacities and eliminate human error in certain processes, or at least reduce it. We wanted to hedge our bets though, so we bought used equipment. It took a little longer to get it fully commissioned, but it was purchased for less than 10% of the original MSRP. That piece of equipment, used in conjunction with a couple of other pieces of equipment, has transformed our business. Our new customers will allow us to double the business or even more. It has been an overwhelming success story.
So what do you do? I'm into, murders and executions mostly.
M&A, mergers and acquisitions.
There are 5 key areas to assess when potentially implementing an M&A strategy. 1, who? Who will do the work? Is it going to be the internal staff, or are you going to outsource all or part of the process? 2, size. How big of a company are you going after? Is this going to be a much smaller competitor, or is it going to be a company that's similar in size to you, or perhaps even larger? 3rd, how will you finance the transaction? Is this going to be out of operating cash flows? Are you going to take on bank debt? It's something that needs to be assessed. 4th, horizontal or vertical integration. If it's vertical integration, that might mean buying a supplier or buying one of your customers. If it's horizontal integration, that would mean buying a competitor that's very similar to you. Finally, that's supposed to be a flag, even though I don't think I'm winning any awards for my illustration skills, but that relates to location. Where is the company going to be acquired that is your target?
After doing this for almost 20 years, our experience is that it is very hard to get deals closed. It is hard to find a business owner that is ready to sell. It is hard to find a business you want to buy. It is hard to agree on terms. The legal document negotiation is far from easy. For those reasons and a multitude of others, deciding to pursue an M&A strategy is easy, but actually executing that strategy is much more difficult. What is unfortunate about M&A is that everything could be going great with zero cause for concern, and then a misunderstanding or incorrect assumption kills the deal.
After being exposed to the roller coaster ride that essentially is M&A, my wife told me not to talk about any deals until I was at the closing table. Smart lady.
With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about who will execute the various parts of the process. There are really 3 methods here: in-house, hybrid, or full service. In-house is easy to understand. All of the activities will be performed by internal staff, with the exception of legal documentation and certain diligence streams. The hybrid method I have in mind is where the company would hire a firm that specializes in lead generation to execute a cold call and/or cold email outreach project in order to identify acquisition candidates. This part of the process can be very time-consuming. It probably wouldn't be too hard for a business owner and his management team to develop an initial list of acquisition candidates, but after that initial list of say 20 to 40 has been exhausted, building out the list further is difficult. These lead gen firms have access to databases that help a great deal here. You of course can subscribe to these, but there is bound to be some trial and error here. My firm has used at least 10 databases, and I honestly can't say I love any of them. The full service method would entail hiring an investment bank or business broker to manage the process. This firm would find leads, help negotiate terms, and then guide the deal to close. The high value benefit here is that you will be taking advantage of the banker's experience sourcing and executing transactions. This can lead to risks being mitigated, but will also allow you and your team to focus on your day jobs. This comes at a cost, of course. I've shared a lot about my thoughts on business brokers and investment bankers in prior videos and in my ebook, but I will summarize it by saying that I have known a lot of business owners that made great decisions in running and growing their business, but made a poor or even terrible choice in the banker or broker they hired. This is more relevant to those selling their business, but it also applies when hiring a buy-side advisor. Moving on, another crucial factor to consider is size. The ideal size will be impacted by the size of your company as well as the financing available for the acquisition. Related to that topic, will the acquisition be funded from internal cash flows? Will you, as the owner, put up the majority of the capital required? Or will you seek third-party financing such as bank debt? All can be effective, but the decision needs to be made, and the size of the target and how to finance the deal are linked. Next, it is helpful to think about what type of company you want to acquire. Will the company increase the capacity of your current capabilities, or will it bring new capabilities? Again, no wrong answer here, but it should be thought through. Finally, what impact does location have on the process? In some circumstances, the ideal acquisition candidate will be close by. In others, a longer distance might make more sense. As with the previous sections, there is no wrong answer. A word of caution here though. In my experience, the hardest variables to solve for is location. I have talked to numerous folks who want to acquire a business in one specific city or region. If they prioritize location, it either lengthens the process or they have to relax other criteria, or both.
In order to determine what type of horizontal or vertical integration to pursue, I tend to think about the 4 C's. Well, what are the 4 C's? C number 1, customers. C number 2, capabilities. C number 3, capacities. And C number 4, competition.
Acquire for customers. The idea here is to pursue M&A because we want business from a specific customer. This idealized customer could be one actual company or participate in an industry of interest. If your company has an issue with customer concentration, this is oftentimes the easiest way to eliminate that issue. Just be careful to avoid overconcentration in any industry or end market, especially a cyclical industry like automotive. Acquire for capabilities. If your company is unable to provide a product or service, and offering that product or service would be highly desirable, then it might make sense to acquire a company that already offers it. Acquire for capacity. Sometimes it is easier to acquire another business to add capacity than it is to expand your own facility or buy a new facility and equip it. In service businesses especially, sometimes the capacity that is desired is human capital, not equipment or square footage. Acquire to reduce competition. This will likely be a combination of 2 or more of the above, but the idea is simple. Perhaps your company would grow if one of your competitors was brought in-house. Case study, Dart Casting. Dart Casting, located in the Chicago suburb of Allsup, Illinois, had grown very well through the years. Unlike many die casters, Dart didn't have an overconcentration within the automotive industry. We wanted to grow, and our first attempts were to do so organically. However, we ran into challenges because it seemed like all the opportunities for new business were in the automotive sector. While we hadn't begun a search for an acquisition, we were open to acquiring if the right opportunity presented itself. An opportunity did just that in the form of General Die Casters. General Die Casters was similar to Dart in that it offered a wide range of capabilities on high tonnage machines. While there is always a high level of work involved in an acquisition, we were able to get that one closed. That occurred in early 2023, and the companies have been working towards becoming fully integrated. The M&A strategy has been successful so far, and we are already on the hunt for a third business in the die casting industry. 4 Pillars sourced the General Die Casters acquisition, and we are hopeful we can source the next acquisition as well.
As a business owner, if M&A is an important part of the strategy, then partnering with a private equity firm might be a good decision because it would likely increase the likelihood of success and probably also shorten the time frame as well. 4 Pillars would be a good choice here. You might want to check them out.
Putting it all together.
It seems I always have a disclaimer of sorts whenever I start a new section, and I wouldn't want to disappoint all my loyal fans out there, all 5 of you. So I'll start this section with a disclaimer as well.
An important part of the 4 Pillars playbook is to go through a strategic planning process. We didn't reinvent the wheel with the process we use, but I created a video to walk through it because sometimes the hardest part about doing something is simply getting started. Watching or listening to that guide could be just the start you need.
Without further ado, here are the 4 steps. 1, talk to customers. 2, talk to M&A candidates. 3, set SMART goals. And 4, monitor results.
Step 1. Have a discussion with your customers. Why start here? Well, why not? It is hard to convince people or companies to give you money. Your current customers are doing that. Find out what matters most to them in terms of value they derive from their suppliers, including you. There are a number of questions that could or should be asked. A sampling of these include, why did you start using our products or services? Why do you continue to use them? What features of our products or services are most important to you? What percentage of your spend for our product or service category do we get? Who do you consider to be some of our competitors? For each of those competitors, what do we do better and worse? What products or services would you like our company to offer? What makes it easy to do business with our company? What makes it hard to do business with our company? Do we meet deadlines on product or service delivery? I have not undertaken this process directly, but there is a concept developed by Bain called the Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score measures customer loyalty by looking at their likelihood of recommending a given business. One way to do this would be to use the NPS template available by SurveyMonkey. After having discussions with your customers, you might find there's a reason they aren't doing more business with you, or there might not be a reason. Sometimes our customers don't even know the full breadth of our offerings.
That has actually happened to us at 4Pillars before. Because our portfolio is overweight in manufacturing, sometimes business owners will ask us, do we even buy companies outside of manufacturing? The answer, absolutely yes, we do.
This process has also helped us at our portfolio company, Southwest Steel. During a lunch and learn we hosted at a customer's office, we were able to learn that their impression was that we were too small to handle some of their larger projects. We were not able to assuage those concerns immediately, but we have been working at it. As discussed earlier, we added capacity, and that was one way we have tried to prove our capabilities to them. There are also likely to be instances of less helpful feedback, though. At Dark Casting, some of our customers wanted us to offer certain types of coating to the products we manufactured for them. This wasn't something we were willing to do, based largely on the potential environmental liability of offering this coating. Another less helpful situation is when we try to strike up a conversation with the customer, and the customer isn't really willing to engage. Unfortunate, but it happens. Step 2. Talk to potential acquisition candidates. Even though M&A might not be high on your list of priorities, it usually doesn't hurt to reach out to potential targets to see if you can strike up a conversation about potentially purchasing their business. Now, this might feel uncomfortable if you have never done it before, but you will adapt. The point at this step isn't to decide to make an acquisition or not. It is simply a fact-gathering step, and the information obtained in this step will be used to formulate the broader strategy. Step 3. Analyze the results and determine how you will try to grow. Now that you have had discussions with your customers, does that change your perspective on how best to grow? New insights from that step are not required, so if you didn't get any useful feedback or skip that step altogether, by no means is the process over. Much like earlier sections, let's address this step by step. What type of growth will be pursued? Organic, M&A, or both? If organic, inbound, outbound, or both? More of the same, or new, or both? Will this be performed in-house, or will all or portions of it be outsourced?
Similar to what we did at Southwest Steel, evaluate these 6 options to see which seems to hold the most promise in terms of growth for your business.
If M&A, will the process be executed in-house, by a banker or broker, or a hybrid model? Which of the 4 C's will be prioritized? Will a geographic constraint be added? How will the deal be financed? Step 4. Establish SMART goals around the strategy. I think it is relatively easy to understand why goals should be developed. I won't belabor this point, but if goals aren't articulated, then to paraphrase a quote from Yogi Berra, you might end up someplace else. Or perhaps worse, 3, 6, 12 months from now, the growth initiative will stutter and/or fail. Monitor results. As you move through the process, review your progress against the goals you have set. As conditions change, perhaps the strategy needs to be tweaked or goals adjusted. Regardless, this isn't a set it and forget it type situation. Growth is challenging, and the importance of the initiative should be conveyed to the team by talking about progress often. A consolidated strategy, QPD. Our second platform acquisition was Eagle Precision Sheet Metal, EPSM. Our initial goal was to improve operations and grow opportunistically, both organically and via M&A. The first opportunity for meaningful growth came via M&A. Unbeknownst to us, the owner of a local machine shop, Turk Manufacturing, had reached out to the former owners of EPSM and asked what it was like to work with 4Pillars. Obviously, we weren't privy to those conversations, but the feedback was positive enough that the seller decided he only wanted to sell to us. Though no transaction is without its share of ups and downs, the deal went relatively smoothly. At this point, we had not made the decision to rebrand as QPD, or Qualified Production and Development, just yet, but that is what the combined business is now called. After the close of the transaction, we started with step 1 of our process. During this, we came to understand that the relationships with some of our customers were not as strong as they could be. We were able to ascertain that in order to firm up the relationship, we needed to show that we were willing to grow with them by increasing capacity primarily and adding new capabilities secondarily. What also came out of this was the realization that pursuing ISO certification was a must. Not sure if this qualifies as a capability or something else, but most of our existing customer base as well as our customer prospects were multinational corporations. Not having ISO certification was a non-starter for many, if not all, of our prospects. We weren't ready to start step 2 as the feedback from step 1 gave us much to work work with and substantial potential for growth. Regardless, we were approached about another acquisition. Ultimately, we were unable to close that acquisition. Through the process, we realized that if we wanted a realistic chance at landing some new blue chip customers, we would need to add capabilities in the form of human capital. Through changes in the competitive dynamics of the local market, we were able to add personnel that had previously worked for some of our competitors. Therefore, this was another form of organic growth. QPD is a unique situation because they are what's called a build-to-print shop. They don't have a line card or a product line. Instead, they manufacture to specifications as outlined by the customer. Therefore, some of the types of growth are not applicable, such as existing customers buying other products we offer. Though I've left out many of the details of our growth strategy in order to reduce the number of yawns because people have busy schedules, I was able to include the key components. The results speak for themselves. We have been successful at increasing wallet share from our largest customers. We have added capabilities and new customers. As great as that sounds, it took a lot longer than expected. Even though some of our customers were clamoring for parts that only we could produce, it still took around 18 months to get a supplier code. For an entrepreneurial company like ours, it was hard to imagine how much red tape and bureaucracy there could be. It was all worth it in the end, though.
I remember when we were launching 4 Pillars, my partner and I had more than we could ever potentially get done in a timely manner. It was easy to feel overwhelmed. So instead of feeling overwhelmed, what we tried to do is just put one foot in front of the other, take small bites out of the projects that we felt were the most impactful, and just keep going. And that momentum is how we got to where we are today.
When looking at this guide, one of the goals is to help provide actionable steps on how to get started. There are a few concepts that have been important in our efforts, but I think we can all agree that the first 2 steps are pretty easy. The challenge will increase from there, but hopefully this helps make the process of setting the strategy a little easier.
I'm Nick McLean with 4 Pillars, and if you were able to stay awake for this video, then growing your business should be no problem at all. Thanks for watching.